Hey everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today we're talking with David Sidoni. He educates and empowers first-time home buyers through podcasting and social media, and he's helped countless people achieve home ownership, which statistically has become more and more difficult. I'm super excited because I think the real estate market and home ownership in general are so important to our daily lives. It can really impact how we live. So, with that, welcome, David, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, I've certainly spoken to real estate people in the past and everything else, but never somebody with your particular focus. I actually love what you do because um, I can recall back to being a first-time home buyer myself, and it's stressful. There's a lot of stuff that you got to contend with, and there's a lot you don't know. You don't even realize what you don't know. So definitely want to dig into all that. But let's start off a little bit just with your background. Did you start in real estate, or what did you do to start your career?
Well, it's a very odd, random story. In my 20s, I was actually in show business. I got a movie when I was 20 years old. I turned 21 on the set of the Disney musical called Newsies, which is about a bunch of
Awesome.
singing and dancing newsboys. And that was what, 1990, 91. So here we are today, and now I'm a first-time homebuyer guru. So it's been a strange path. I spent about 10 years in showbiz, danced with Michael Jackson, and had my own TV show, and was on a TV show on Nickelodeon for 3 or 4 years. And I got towards the end of my career and wanted something a little more stable. If you're pretty much not the top 1%, you're hustling every single day. And so I started dabbling in real estate investing on the side. Um, and that was going well. And my life was moving me away from LA, not too far, just down south to a more stable life in Orange County, California, because I was courting, a woman, of course, courting a partner. Here you go. And I decided that the investing side was too many numbers and not enough people. So I started selling residential real estate. About a dozen years of doing that. And the long story short is one day my wife looked at me and said, you're only happy when you work with those first time home buyers. Because I had a team and
Oh,
did all the other stuff. And I'd learned enough about the industry to figure out the dirty little secret in real estate. And it's that first time home buyers who are in the need of the most help get the least and get handed to untrained, unskilled professionals so that the brokers or the big team leaders can pad their numbers because they don't want to spend the time and the effort to educate these people and to work with them because, like everything in business, who wants to do the lowest commission on the totem pole? So I decided to try to start helping them out. It was a passion project and it sort of blew up. So here we are today.
that's awesome. I mean, first of all, what an interesting journey and exciting background. I mean, even if you don't end up, working in the career you start off in or whatever thing you thought you were passionate about, it's still fantastic to have those experiences because it just builds the richness of life. I think that, a lot of times, there's an old song by Harry Chapin, Mr. Tanner, and he talks about a guy that was like a baritone, but he also was a dry cleaner. And it was his life, not his livelihood, right? So we can have different things where we're passionate about it. We do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the place that we make our money or whatever, but still amazing experiences. And so, but it also great that you were able to find a thing that really was your niche sort of the passion coincides with the need, right? Because we all want to do something we're passionate about. I think we're better at it when we feel that way. At the same time, it's important that there's a need where we're actually able to help somebody when we're doing that. So that's fantastic, and I agree with you totally. I mean, you can see why. I mean, I remember being in the market, and I had a decent experience overall, but I just remember it being very, you're getting advice also from a lot of people, and it's all personal, anecdotal advice because they're not professionals. They're your family, they're your friends. So they're telling you things based on their one singular experience. And so that may or may not be true. That might just be their experience. And so, yes, it helps you figure out what to look for. At the same time, it's not a holistic view where they're going to really educate you and figure out what you need to do. So I know the real estate market has been a real hot button lately. Obviously, all this talk about interest rates, prices, inventory. I know where I live. I'm sort of in a suburb of New York City. I'm in Connecticut, but most of the people where I live train into the city. They work in the city, and so we had a real inventory problem. Not enough inventory. A lot of buyers. Prices spiking. What do you see as the current state of the market right now, and for this coming year, 2025 coming up?
Oh boy, Brett, how nerdy do you want me to get? This is what I do 24/7. I
Yeah.
don't, take the data and specifically analyze it myself. That's not 100% what I do. It's I just deep dive research 24/7 so that I can bring that information to the listeners of the podcast and the people who watch on YouTube. We're trying to let them know what all the economists are thinking. The
Mhm.
biggest thing that has been going on for the last 14 years now that nobody is talking about, and um, housing affordability became a big buzzword during this most recent election run up. And suddenly it made it into the zeitgeist. And everyone's talking about the solutions. And unfortunately, no one's talking about the fact that we usually will build 1.2, 1.3 million homes a year. And there's only been 4 or 5 years that we ever have not built over a million homes. Those years were 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we are still playing catch up. We were building at one point like 500,000 homes, more than half of or less than half of what we actually needed. We're somewhere between 4 and 7 million homes behind what we need. It's so much so that I have a joke in the podcast as I'm talking about all these other factors. If I'm talking about the interest rates or the Fed cutting their rate or how inflation's affecting things, I'll go, but you know what? It all comes down to one thing. Say it with me now. And then we all say low inventory. Supply and demand, it's 101. So unfortunately, we're going to be stuck because during that 14-year period, guess what? We also kept making people here in the United States. So the population has gotten to the point. Household formation usually happens between 26 and 28 years old. And unfortunately, last year, the average first time home buyer was 38 years old, the
Whoa,
highest it's
38.
ever been in history. And a lot of people want to say that affordability is the reason for that. But one of the major factors is the low inventory. And then the other factor that goes with it is high rents. But again, Brett, I could nerd out on this all day long.
That's great. That's a great summary and interesting statistics because as somebody who's not in the market, or in the industry like that, I only see the headlines, right? I see the this, that, and like you said, people will point to something that's sometimes simplistic or is more of an effect as opposed to a cause. And so then you just never really know. And again, that's one of those things that if you're studying it and you know those statistics, then you're aware of, possibly what's causing the situation to begin with. So, just philosophically, financially, economically, whatever, should everybody, especially people who are renting right now, be trying to buy a home instead?
It's a loaded, wonderful question, but one that I've been answering for a long time. The question of should I buy a home or not has really started to shift into more of a philosophical question. And there are a lot of financial gurus out there that are millennials and talking to millennials, and they're screaming about live your life. Um, and I understand and I appreciate that. I think it gets way too simplified. These are guru people who rent and still rent and say, I don't ever want to own a home. And a, that scares me a little bit because I'm like, you're a financial guru. Do you understand the math? Because if you're renting for $2,000 a month, the average home is about $427,000 right now. The average rent's about $2,000 to $2,100 for a 2-bedroom apartment. That's nationwide, totally different everywhere. But it's $24,000 a year. And I understand that people want to be free and they want to be able to travel and they don't know where they're going to go and going to work. More for most people, that's the reason why I'm quantifying this. Not for everybody, but for most people, you're going, they'll end up getting in that thinking, and it'll be 3 or 4 years later, and maybe they haven't moved. Maybe they've traveled a lot, but maybe they haven't moved. But every year, that's $24,000 if you're spending $2,000 in rent. And so one of the things that I've come to in talking to the millennials and the Gen Zs is talking about, let's do a rent replacement strategy. We're not buying a home right now because it's a great deal. We're not buying a home because, oh my gosh, they were $50,000 less, or, oh my gosh, it's 4% interest rate. So a mortgage is only $1,500, but you're paying $2,000 in rent. Why don't you buy? The sexy deal's gone. So it's a more convoluted, way less sexy algorithm. But the concept of understanding that rent has gone up exponentially at such an incredible rate that for most people who are going to spend the next 5 to 10 years, sure, living your life, traveling, feeling like you want to be free, that's great. But 10 years of rent at $2,000, which might be what, $3,500 by the time you finish the 10 years, we're talking $400,000 that you're going to end up spending that you could have done a rent replacement strategy, and there will be some sacrifices at the beginning. But if it's, 2 vacations instead of 4 to save up for that down payment, and probably the most important thing that's explained to people is that you're fixed. The average age is 38 right now. Imagine you're 28 years old right now and you're renting for $2,100 a month. Well, if you wait 10 years, what's your rent going to be in 10 years? If you put it together and you buy right now, then when you're 30, when you're 32, when you're 34, you still have a $2,000 payment. How many people right now would like their rent to be the same rent they were paying 5 years ago? Well, that's what would have happened if you bought and you used a 30-year fixed mortgage loan product. And probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing is there's fear happening right now because there's so much talk about it. And so it's much easier when there's fear to then listen to these other ideas and concepts of stay young, stay loose, stay free, rent. That might have been, maybe wasn't appealing to you, but now it's appealing to you only because it appeases the fact that you can stay away from this thing you're afraid of. So that's why the education, and like you said, it's how I describe it. It's education and empowerment. I want to empower people just with the knowledge. And if the knowledge works for you, for most people out there, I think it really can be. Now, for some people, whatever, rock on, live your life. But I do this because in my 20s, when I was in showbiz, I was in Hollywood and I rented for 8-9 years in the 90s, and I spent $104,000 in rent. And I did the math. It's like $330,000 in today's dollars.
Yeah.
And I swear I could have easily gotten places way better than the 4 different apartments I had because I had to move. A condo, and I could have put $5,000 down. It would have absolutely changed my life at 28 years old to suddenly be like, oh, okay, now I've got, this big chunk of money. But because I didn't do that, because I didn't have the education and the understanding, even from, my parents who were great people and were trying to help me, but it wasn't part of the discussion. And trying to let people understand that there is a path and it's easier than you think. But, the other side part of my story that I find very interesting is one of the things I told myself was, well, what if I get a job in New York? What if I get a show in New York and I got to go? Um, duh. Who knows more people that will sublet or rent an apartment than a freaking 23-year-old actor in Los Angeles? You know, renting your place out is so simple when you are of the age, when you are around a bunch of people that are all trying to figure out where the hell they want to live. You know, I ended up, I believe I was 26 years old and I got a job in Atlanta for the 1996 Olympics. So I was gone for 4 months. We rented our place and I think it was a day and a half. And it was pre internet, people. That was phone calls. I couldn't text anybody. I couldn't put out a Facebook post or Facebook. Wow, now I'm dating myself. I couldn't have done it on Instagram. But yeah, there's the fear of, well, what if I want to go? Awesome, go, and then figure out a way to rent your property, and then while you're away, maybe you're making $100 a month, or maybe you're breaking even and making the appreciation on the property. But there's 1,000 different mathematics. The problem is it's not a quick fix. You can't click on it. Right now, I'm on TV. I'm not on TV. Right now, I'm watching TV. And on TV, I'm seeing these apps that have commercials 24/7 to help you delete your subscriptions. Rocket Mortgage is doing one, and Experian has one, and it's truly because so many people have just signed up for something and set it and forget it and forgot it. And so the ability to have somebody else just go click, 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 boom. I wish buying a home was like that, but it's not. And so if you've only explored that, then I'd love to be able to give you an app where you could click 5 things and replace your rent with a home. But it takes a little more planning. And
Yeah,
so,
which makes total sense. But the other thing about it, I think that's short-sighted about the idea of wanting. Look, the whole I want to be nimble. Taking care of a house is a big deal, right? So there's a lot that goes. But the fact of the matter is, real estate is one of the most dependable assets you could ever have, in the sense that it's not a short term profit center. But if you hold it long enough, then, for the most part, it's going up in value. And so then not only do you have the ability to rent it out if you just want to rent it and you're not going to be living there, but at the same time, now you have equity. So all the money that you put in is now worth something. So you can always sell, you know, if you buy a house and the worst part is, well, I don't know where I'm going to live in 5 years. Neither does anybody else, really. I mean, we all think we do, but things happen, and so if you did need to move, yes, there's some work involved to get things done, but at the same time, there's a lot more resources out there than there ever were. And it's a lot easier to be able to do things because we can communicate so much, more quickly and easily. So, um, I've sort of seen both on the younger side and the older side that movement of let's be free spirits, let's sell our house, let's bounce around the world, and I see the sort of wanderlust, that can help you satisfy. At the same time, it is short-sighted, especially if you're young, because rents are only going to go up and you're going to need to be able to continue to pay that, and you're getting nothing in return even over the long haul. And so that's why I was curious as to your take on that, because you know again, I even as a homeowner myself, like there's days where I say, geez, I wish I just rented a place and somebody else could take care of all the stuff that's got to be done. At the same time, it affords you a lot of other things that you might not otherwise, have. And so I see that value there. So is there a particular formula or way or method that a young renter today can try to afford to own a home? Because as you mentioned before, the affordability thing is a big buzzword. Everybody's talking about that. They say it's really difficult. Is there some advice you'd give around that?
yeah. And it's very interesting because I was listening to what you were saying and nodding my head like crazy. I'll put it in two sound bites. The first one is the philosophical, and the second one is the practical. So the philosophical side of it is like you were talking about people wanting to be nimble and be able to, well, what if I don't want to live here in 5 years? The selling the house with 5 years of equity means now you have a gigantic chunk of money for the one bill that you pay every month. I think philosophically, people think buying a home is like, saving for my retirement, and which is a sacrifice. Everything that you do to do the right thing to save means you're taking a chunk of your paycheck and you're putting it someplace and not being able to touch it, not using it to travel, not using it to do things. The one thing that I'm trying to just make sure everyone understands is this is a rent replacement strategy. Let me see your spreadsheet for your bills this month. I know your number one line item for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So what if I'm not asking you to spend extra? I'm asking you to take the largest chunk of money that you output every month and put it towards yourself. So that's the first piece, is understanding the philosophy that I'm not saying put $500 into a 401k or a Roth IRA, because that everyone thinks that's $6,000 I could have spent this year to go to Bali. I understand that, go see the Northern Lights. Totally. We're talking about taking that biggest piece that you pay out every single month. I wish we were still writing checks so you could feel the pain when you had to write that number down and send it out. So on the practical side, I believe that probably the biggest thing that the people who've listened to the show or seen it on YouTube and reached out and said, hey, what do I do? Is practicing a mortgage. Now, in order to do that, you need to set up a team. And that means you need to, instead of trying to do the research all by yourself and go online and use the mortgage calculators, which, by the way, I have an episode that says mortgage calculators are garbage. And because, like you were talking about, the individuality of this is, unfortunately, we're in such a, I can just go on and compare online now and then shop for myself to get a laptop or a TV or whatever it is. There are about 200 different variables for each individual buyer. Nobody's buying experience is the same. I always say, congratulations, your uncle bought a house 5 weeks ago and he's the smart, or 5 months ago, and he's the smartest guy you know. Doesn't matter. And then I follow it up with, it doesn't matter if you bought it 5 months ago, 5 weeks ago, maybe even 5 days ago. And it definitely doesn't matter because, yes, the market's changed in that time, but you and your uncle have a completely different financial breakdown. So the first thing you do is talk to a team, is interview and hire a team that's willing to work with you. If you say, I'm not going to buy for a year, give me a plan, give me a roadmap. Now, a good team will give you a roadmap, and then you could start practicing a mortgage payment. Okay, well, this is the payment for the type of house that I want. In order to do that, you have to have a relationship with a realtor who can show you the values, and then have a mortgage person that can help you break down exactly what the payment would be and see if you can do it. I always tell people, what's the worst thing you can do if you're paying $2,000 a month and you find out a mortgage for the home that you want to buy is $2,600 and you practice for 5 months? You put $600 a month for 3 months. Now you have $3,000. If at the end of that time you say, screw that, great. Now you have $3,000 to take a vacation. But if you practice that, that's the first thing. And then I would even say, well, I'll call that 1B. 1A is automate. We live in such a wonderful world. Automate. Everybody right now, pause the podcast, open your banking app, and take $25 a month and move it from your incoming income to a savings account. If you start automating savings, and that's where you're going to understand how to work and get to the position where you can buy. But you got to know the numbers first, and that takes hiring a team, and not just punching stuff in for online, with an online mortgage calculator or an online lender to figure out what you're worth, because they're out there just trying to sell you a loan, and they're going to try to shove you into whatever you can do today instead of helping you plan for your best option, which might be 6 months from now.
That's a good point. Everybody that if you're engaging with these apps or you're engaging with anything, it's important to understand what the motive is behind it. And in most cases, it's to get you as a client. And if it's a short-term mentality, then it's to tell you whatever you need to tell you. I remember when we bought our first home, one of the things that we looked at when we sat down to take a look at our various mortgage payments that we had options on, one of the options at that time was interest only. And so you could get into your house for a third of the price. And I have a bit of a finance background, and I mean, I know enough to know. And I looked at it and I said, well, look, on a daily basis, this is really nice. This is really comfortable. Um, if your home doesn't continue to appreciate faster than the interest that you're paying, you're going to be underwater with this loan. And I turned to my wife at the time and I said, um, you know, this shouldn't even be allowed because the average person has no idea. And what's happening is for us, we're fortunate enough that we can select from these options and decide what we like best. There are some people that are sitting at this table, that's the only option they can afford. So they're going to do it. And they're playing roulette with the fact that the housing market's going to appreciate faster than the interest is going to build up. And if you catch it at the right time and you're and the boom happens, great. You make out and it works. But even if that happens, I equate it to sort of winning the lottery, right? Now you believe like you went to the casino and you made a bunch of money. So now you believe, oh, the way to make money is just go to the casino. I'll just keep making money every time. So I'll just keep buying houses interest only. Well, eventually the music's going to stop and you're not going to have a chair. And when that happens, all of a sudden, all that profit you made has now turned into debt because now you're underwater with it. And, I could just tell intuitively it was a bad idea, but there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of people that don't have that education, even understand that. So, um, from the backdrop of the research and preparing to purchase a home, obviously getting a team is a big thing because they're the experts in it. Is that what your number one tip or advice is for the right way to do the research?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I started, the podcast, and I was trying to think of a name, and I was like, oh, it's How to Buy a Home. And so that's what I'm going to do. So I walked everybody through how to buy a home. After a year or so, people started to reach out, and suddenly they started asking me all these intricate questions. And in the back of my mind, the answer to every question was, what the hell? Why didn't your realtor tell you about this? Every single question. Well, I was going through the inspection and I saw this, and I've been spending the last 6 months kind of going down a rabbit hole of the subreddit for first-time home buyers, and I had to stop because I wanted to absolutely slam my head into my laptop because people are taking pictures of a crack that they found at their home inspection, putting it up on Reddit and asking a bunch of random strangers, should I be worried about this? The concept that everybody's trying to learn everything. So I'm giving everybody all the information they need to know. There are plenty of episodes on how do you win a bidding war. There are episodes on how do you buy a home with a high interest rate and what can you do about that. Episodes on how do you look for homes, how do you use the internet to help you look when you can't get out, and all the different websites that you can use. All of that information is in there, but the answer to every question is the number one thing that you can do is hire a badass professional like a year ahead of time. If you were, I don't think that realtors are as, essential to life as doctors. But the analogy is, if you're going to get heart surgery, why is it that everybody that I talk to on the internet, they're actually acting like they're going into medical books and learning how to do the surgery themselves? as opposed to hiring a good surgeon and finding a good hospital. And there's going to be, if you find a good one, not only are they going to answer all your questions, but as you said, they're going to show you, if you're in the right position, these are all your options. Even some of the ones, like you said, that should feel illegal and nobody should be doing them, like an interest-only loan. But yeah, every episode I'm still giving the people as much information about what they're going to encounter throughout the process so they're not surprised. But at the underlying thought process behind all of it is I'm telling you this because this is my expertise, but no two buyers are the same. So you want somebody else to bounce this idea off of.
Yeah, which makes a ton of sense. I mean, and it's funny because, like you mentioned, nowadays because there's a proliferation of information everywhere, it's easy to feel like you can become an expert by doing a little bit of research. I had a brick and mortar business years ago, and we did custom configure PCs. We shipped them all over the country. And one of my favorite things, and I say that very jokingly, is we'd get the tech support call from somebody. And invariably it went something like this. Well, I have a problem with my computer. Okay, so what about this? What about that? Well, I have a friend who's a technician. I have a friend who's a technician. What that means is they know somebody that installed a hard drive in a computer once. So all of a sudden they know how to diagnose, treat, and 9 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100, that technician friend is the one who broke the machine because they didn't know what to put where. Oh, no, no, no. This guy knows. He's been doing this for years. They send it back to us. We look at it. Okay, you have this one thing in the wrong place. So it's not plugged in, which is why it isn't working. It was plugged in when it shipped to you. So your technician buddy is the one who unplugged it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's mind numbing if you're the person who is the expert because you're like, if you would just trust me and listen to me, I can tell you that, you're better off to hire out for that skill, right? If you don't
Yeah.
really have the skill set. Um, and so it is funny how it's sort of a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of information, which is good. It's easy to do research. At the same time, we can be our own worst enemy because we can think we're getting information and it might not even be reliable in the first place. But even if it is, if we don't have the experience in the background, we may not understand it in a way where we can implement it the same way an expert would. And so, in terms of online resources, I know you have, some issues with resources like Zillow and stuff like that. What do you think the problem is with those kinds of resources, and are there ones that you do actually recommend or think are good for first time home buyers?
Well, I do have issues with some of the what we call the public portals, but it has nothing to do with the information that they're giving. It has to do with the way that the users are using them, and most importantly, who they're selling you. That's the dirty little secret in real estate is that the real estate industry has 1.5 million realtors right now, and it runs on a turnover game. 87% of realtors will not be realtors in 5 years. 47% of realtors did not sell one home in 2024. The
Wow.
bar to get a license is so low. And you were talking about the researching, which is really interesting. We had a doctor who was on the show, um, Vegas guy, originally reached out to us, and from his research, he was going to use this thing called a physician's loan, and he wanted to buy a duplex or a fourplex. That was his plan, and based on all the research he did, and then after talking to him a little bit and asking him hours of questions and getting all the detail, the professional team that we ended up setting him up with there in Las Vegas, he found a completely different path, different loan, and ended up buying a single family home. And he caught himself halfway through questioning the realtor after the realtor had shown him all these different options and the mortgage pro. And he went, "Oh my God, I'm being that patient that comes in and WebMDs me." So when he understood that part of the process, he understood that he had a team that he had vetted. And the problem when you're out there researching on your own is maybe you don't know what exactly to look for when you're looking at a home. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times, I'm a national figure now for what I do, and I get people just texting me a Zillow link. Do you think this is a good home? And I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm not in Philadelphia. Second of all, um, I, I can't walk the home. I can't. But then, most importantly, I don't know anything about you. Are you
Yeah.
stretching to the last dollar to buy this home? Or are you buying this home because you need a place to live for a year and you want to sell it in a year? Or is this your forever home that you've been saving for 5 years? All
Mhm.
those things come into play. So I think people are using the sites incorrectly. I think the biggest mistake is looking at list prices. List prices are garbage. List prices don't mean anything. You have to look at the sold prices only. And then you dig deeper than that. How many days was it on the market? Did it sell over or under its list price? All of those things will tell you the values. But the biggest problem with all the sites, I love Zillow and Homes.com and Realtor.com for information. They
Mhm.
give you information in a much prettier way than a lot of the direct multiple listing services or the MLS.
Mhm.
Um, the problem is that they exist solely off of the backs of advertising dollars from realtors. Everybody that they refer to you are people that paid to be there. It has nothing to do with their professional experience, quality, or how perfect a fit they are for you and your needs. So that's the big bummer about those big sites is that you're getting shoved an agent that's a gets a title of featured expert or an area pro, and it was just whoever wrote the biggest check.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good to know. I don't know if a lot of people would be aware of that. You would just assume, oh, it's a resource, so they're going to send me somebody that's been vetted and that they trust. But in reality, if it's a business, then obviously there's another motive there. So let's talk about real estate agents just as a general idea. Obviously people have very mixed feelings. I know some people that are thrilled with their agent and felt like it was great. Other people that had bad experiences. What should potential home buyers look for in a real estate team?
It's 100% experience. I think walking into it with the understanding that there are 1.5 million realtors and that, like I said, 47% didn't sell a home last year, an understanding that I don't know exactly because it's a theoretical stat. I don't know, 60, 70% of the people who have a real estate license, it's a hobby. Understanding that is your first, instead of going into it going, they're all sleazy, they're all just, the used car salespeople. That reputation happened because of unskilled service. I think people who thought they got ripped off and scammed happens more because the agent just didn't know what they're doing. Because
Yeah.
my 14-year-old could pass the licensing test. It's the whole system is set up as a giant scam so that the brokers can make money by playing a numbers game. Having as many people out there acting as agents trying to grab everybody who wants to buy and sell a home. So your knowledge as a buyer of that will help you. It will help you in how you interview. So the number one thing you're looking for is if they are new, are they on a team, and how much training have they gotten on that individual team? What are the core values of that team? Is that team embedded in the community? Is that team about giving back? Is that team about client relations? Or are they a turn and burn factory? Um, so there are, I call the people that you're looking for unicorns because they're rare and they're magical. And there are some experienced agents out there that will work with first time homebuyers. They appreciate and respect their value. So if you're looking for the unicorn, that's your best bet. They're a little harder to find because sometimes the really experienced agents will have a team and they'll have buyer's agents on their team. Now, some of the unicorns that I work with, the buyer's agents have been doing it for 10 years. They just don't want to run a team. They just like working with buyers. And the experience level, the understanding, And I tell people all the time, if you're sitting down with somebody and you're having a conversation with them, why not just ask them, hey, here's my number. Will you, we're going to take a few days to figure out who we're going to work with. Would you have 5 of your clients give me a call? Now, realtors hate when I say this. People in the industry hate when I say this, but anyone who's good and has been doing this for a while, no fear at all. I mean, when I post something on Instagram, half the likes are people that are sitting in a house that were scared to death to buy, but I helped them buy in 2016 or in 2022. And those people, and we talk all the time. I got a guy in Philly I need to text today because the Eagles stomped the Cowboys yesterday. I don't know when this is airing. Maybe they're out of the
Yeah.
playoffs by now. But
That's awesome.
yeah, it's understanding to ask the right questions about experience, their involvement in the community, asking them about down payment assistance programs if you're a first-time home buyer. If your realtor doesn't know about or can't say, hang on, let me make a call, and call their lender who knows. Because first-time homebuyer down payment assistance programs, again, completely non-Googleable because they're not just localized by state, by county, sometimes by city and municipality.
Yeah.
And they're in and out until the money goes. So there's a ton of stuff that you can ask them to find out if they have a first-time homebuyer experience, or if you find out that they got their license, a year and a half ago and they just have a really cool Instagram, because there's a ton of realtors that are out there like that and they've sold 2 homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, image isn't always reality, right? I mean, we certainly know that nowadays. So that's awesome. That's great advice. So where can people find you, your products, your services, connect with you?
It's all at howtobuyahome.com. Everything's there. The podcast is How to Buy a Home. You can find that wherever you search. The YouTube's How to Buy a Home. My Instagram is How to Buy a Home Podcast because some guy got it in 2018 and never uses it and won't give it to me. But howtobuyahome.com, you can find everything there. There's all kinds of resources, and I've been giving this away for free with the thought process that this would eventually grow my business and eventually, become something that can help people all over. And it's been 5 years and we've helped a lot of people. So it's been incredibly fulfilling. And I've learned a lot along the way.
That's awesome. Perfect. Thanks for that. All right. I have one last question I have to ask because I'm always curious as to what everyone has to say. Now, I know you're in the real estate niche, but I'm just curious. What do you think is the number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur over the last 5 years, I have spent so many hours on my own learning things that at the beginning of my career cost me lots of money. In 2005 and 6 and 7, I was traveling to webinars or traveling to seminars that
Yep.
now are webinars. I was spending boatloads on CDs. Yeah, kids, this is my third act. I'm 54. Um, and learning. And then there was the other concept of actually doing it, not just buying a book and putting it on the shelf. But over the last 5 or 6 years, the biggest thing I could tell entrepreneurs that I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years is I got a master's in marketing from podcasts. Books are great. And the fact that you don't have to travel and spend as much money to get a high level of education, from the minute I wake up in the morning to washing the dishes, to walking the dogs, to driving in the car, I have something going on that I feel like at the end of every year, I feel like I've done another year of college. And with a podcast, you can stay on top of whatever it is in your business that's evolving, that's current, that's changing. Like right now, anyone who's an entrepreneur who doesn't have 5 podcasts about AI that they're listening to, because it's not going to replace you, but the people who know how to use it in everything are the people that are going to just jump ahead a little faster for the next 2 or 3 years. So for me, it's continual education, because the whole point of being an entrepreneur is that you want to be free so you can do other stuff. And so that means you're not punching a clock and doing the 9 to 5 life. That means you're trying to learn. And the really amazing thing is it's all right there on your phone.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it's so powerful nowadays. It really is crazy, but I agree with you completely. I mean, what the thing I love the most about doing the show is the opportunity to talk with people like you, and I learn stuff every day. So instead of needing to find time to invest in my own education and growth and stuff like that, all I got to do is get on and start talking because you guys teach me a ton of stuff, and it's such a blast. It really is. It's a passion project for me as well. So, all right. Well, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, David, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit howtobuyahome.com for education about the first time home buying process, whether you're a clueless beginner or a research veteran. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want for your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.